There's something strange about people who seem outgoing, friendly, talkative, and yet feel drained and terrified inside whenever they're around others. You might be that person, the one who can make everyone laugh at a party but secretly wishes you could disappear. The one who texts people to hang out, then cancels at the last minute because the anxiety becomes too much. Or the one who loves being around people, but after every social interaction, you replay every word you said in your head, analyzing, judging, overthinking. If that's you, you're not broken. You're not weird. You're what I'd call a socially anxious extrovert. It sounds like a contradiction. How can someone be both social and anxious? How can someone crave connection but fear it at the same time? But that's exactly the paradox so many people live in today. On one hand, you want people, you want laughter, you want closeness, you want to be seen. On the other hand, the idea of being seen makes your chest tighten. It feels unsafe. It feels like exposure. So you oscillate between wanting to belong and wanting to hide, between reaching out and retreating, between craving people and resenting them. A socially anxious extrovert isn't someone who hates people. It's someone whose nervous system has learned that connection is dangerous. Maybe you grew up in an environment where you had to be the entertainer, the pleaser, the one who kept peace or got attention by being on. Maybe every time you were your authentic self, you were rejected or ridiculed. Maybe you learned early that being liked meant performing. So now, even as an adult, you feel pressure to manage everyone's perception of you. You can't just exist. You have to monitor. You have to adapt. You have to constantly check. Am I being too much? Too quiet? Too awkward? Too needy? Too fake? And that constant self-monitoring burns you out. Because when you're in a social situation, you're not just engaging with people. You're running simulations in your head. You're calculating reactions, tone, posture, facial expressions. You're thinking 3 steps ahead. You're retrying to manage how others see you while also trying to manage how you feel about yourself. That's not socializing, that's emotional labor. And it's exhausting. That's why even though you're an extrovert, social interactions can leave you completely drained. You're not tired of people, you're tired of pretending. So let's talk about where that comes from. Social anxiety, at its core, is not just about shyness. It's about safety. The human brain evolved to be hyper-aware of social rejection because thousands of years ago, being excluded from your tribe could mean death. Our nervous systems still carry that programming. When someone looks at you strangely or criticizes you, your brain doesn't register it as a minor social inconvenience. It registers it as danger. So your fight or flight response activates. You start sweating, your heart races, your mind spirals, and you become hypervigilant. Now imagine having that same system but also being wired for extroversion, to crave connection, stimulation, interaction. You end up living in tension. You want what scares you. A lot of socially anxious extroverts grow up misunderstood. Teachers call you talkative, parents say you crave attention, friends say you're too much. But what they don't see is the anxiety underneath it. You're not trying to dominate the room. You're trying to survive it. You talk to fill silence because silence feels dangerous. You joke because you're afraid of being judged. You smile because you've been conditioned to believe that being pleasant keeps you safe. You become a master of social camouflage, able to blend into any environment, but in the process, you start to lose track of who you really are. Every interaction becomes a performance, and every performance leaves you emptier. And here's the tricky part, people like you, they really do. You're funny, warm, empathetic, engaging, but they like the version of you that you carefully constructed, the version that hides the trembling underneath. So when you go home after being with people, you feel a deep loneliness, because no matter how much attention or affection you get, it never feels nourishing. You weren't truly seen. You were admired, maybe, appreciated, but not understood. And that's what creates this strange, hollow ache inside you. Being known, but not known at all. There's another layer to this guilt. Because you know there are introverts who genuinely hate socializing, and here you are, someone who loves people, but can't seem to handle it without spiraling. You might even tell yourself, I'm weak, I'm broken. Why can't I just relax? Why can't I enjoy this like everyone else? You start to label yourself as socially awkward or fake, when in reality, you're just emotionally overwhelmed. Your system is overstimulated. You're constantly managing so much internal data that there's no room left for joy. But here's the key insight. Your anxiety doesn't mean you re bad at being social. It means you care too much. You care about connection. You care about being accepted. You care about making others feel good. That's not a weakness. That's empathy that's gone unregulated. Many people think extroversion means confidence, but that's not true. Extroversion is about energy, where you get it and where you lose it. You can be an extrovert and still be insecure. You can love people but still fear rejection. You can be charming and still hate yourself when you get home. Extroversion doesn't protect you from anxiety. It just makes your anxiety more confusing because you can't even tell what's authentic anymore. Do you actually like being social, or are you addicted to approval? Do you actually enjoy people, or do you just need them to validate you? Do you laugh because it's funny, or because you're scared of silence? That confusion becomes part of your identity. You start to wonder, who am I when I'm not trying to make everyone like me? And when you try to pull back, to be quieter, to take space, you feel even more anxious, because now you're breaking your old pattern. People around you might even notice. They'll ask, what's wrong? You're so quiet today. They're used to the performance. They're used to you carrying the room. And when you stop doing it, they feel uncomfortable, which makes you feel guilty, which makes you perform again. It's a loop that's hard to escape. So how do you break it? You start by understanding that your social anxiety isn't a flaw. It's a learned response. Somewhere along the way, your nervous system decided that connection equals danger. Maybe it was childhood rejection. Maybe it was bullying. Maybe it was emotional neglect, parents who only paid attention when you entertained them. Whatever it was, your system learned that being yourself was not safe. So it created this extroverted mask to survive. And it worked, at least on the outside. But survival strategies eventually become cages. What protected you once now imprisons you. You have to teach your nervous system that safety doesn't come from performance, it comes from authenticity. And that's not easy because authenticity requires tolerance for discomfort. When you start being real, when you say what you actually think, when you stop smiling to make others comfortable, when you sit in silence instead of filling it, your body will panic. It will scream, "This isn't safe," because it's never known safety and stillness. But that's how you heal. You practice being uncomfortable until your body realizes nothing bad happens. That's how you rewire your brain, not by thinking differently, but by experiencing safety where there used to be fear. You also need to stop confusing visibility with connection. Just because people notice you doesn't mean they know you. Just because you make people laugh doesn't mean you're close. Real connection happens when you let yourself be seen, not when you manage how others see you. That might mean fewer friends. It might mean quieter nights, but it will feel more real. Because it's better to have 3 people who know the real you than 30 who love the mask. If you want to know whether you're a socially anxious extrovert, ask yourself this. Do I feel lonely even around people? Do I replay social interactions in my head after they're over? Do I feel like I have to perform to be liked? Do I often feel drained after being social even though I crave it? Do I feel like people don't really know me? If you answered yes to most of those, that's your answer. You're not antisocial, and you're not broken. You're just tired of being who the world trained you to be. Healing this pattern requires 2 things, courage and slowness. Courage to face the fear of rejection, and slowness to rebuild your sense of self. You can't rush it. You can't fake it till you make it. You have to unlearn. You have to let yourself be awkward, quiet, boring, even unlikable sometimes. That's the detox process, letting go of your social mask. You'll feel exposed at first, but what's underneath that mask is where your real confidence lives. True confidence isn't loud, it's grounded. It's the ability to show up without needing to prove anything. And ironically, when you stop trying so hard to be liked, people start liking you more, because they finally sense your authenticity. The more I talk to people who identify as socially anxious extroverts, the more I realize how many of them are actually living with nervous systems that never learn to rest. They are constantly scanning, constantly aware of everyone around them, constantly checking for subtle cues, a shift in tone, a flicker of disinterest, a pause in conversation that feels like rejection. It's not that they want to overanalyze. It's that their body has learned that vigilance equals safety. The moment they relax, they feel exposed. The moment they stop monitoring, their mind starts to panic. So even in laughter, even in joy, there's tension. They're never fully there. And it's like living with one foot on the gas and one on the brake all the time. And the body pays a price for that. When you live in social vigilance, your stress hormones stay elevated. Cortisol, adrenaline. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your muscles stay tight. You start to confuse excitement with anxiety because they feel almost identical. Your heart races, your palms sweat, your mind races, and you can't tell whether you're happy or terrified. That's why so many socially anxious extroverts find themselves feeling off even when everything goes well. After a party, after a fun night out, they feel empty, not because they didn't enjoy it, but because their nervous system never stopped fighting for safety, and this leads to burnout. The kind of burnout that doesn't come from working too much, but from feeling too much. You can only manage that much stimulation for so long before you start to crash. You'll notice this pattern. Days where you're hypersocial, alive, expressive, magnetic, and then days where you completely withdraw. You don't text anyone back, you isolate, you sleep a lot or zone out in front of a screen. That's your body trying to recover from the constant emotional expenditure. You think you're lazy or antisocial, but what's really happening is your nervous system is demanding a reset. One of the most painful aspects of this pattern is the shame that follows it. You start to feel guilty for pulling away. You think, why am I like this? Why can't I just be normal? That shame becomes part of your identity. And shame, unlike guilt, doesn't motivate you to change. It paralyzes you. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am something wrong. And once that belief takes root, every social failure, every awkward moment, every perceived rejection becomes confirmation of your brokenness. You build a worldview around being defective. And that's where many socially anxious extroverts get stuck, not in the anxiety itself, but in the story they tell about the anxiety. So, if you want to begin changing, you have to first rewrite that story. Anxiety isn't evidence of weakness. It's evidence of sensitivity. You feel more, you notice more, you care more. That's not a defect. It's a feature. It just needs regulation. What is happening in your brain is that the amygdala, the part responsible for detecting threats, is overactive. It sends danger signals even when none exist. And your prefrontal cortex, the rational part that can say, relax, you refine, can de-override it fast enough because the emotional response is too quick. You can't logic your way out of anxiety because anxiety doesn't live in logic. It lives in the body. You have to teach your body safety through experience, not through argument. Let's think about how this starts. Maybe when you were a kid, you were naturally outgoing. You like people. You like being seen. You like sharing your ideas. But every time you did, someone made you feel wrong for it. Maybe your parents told you you were too loud. Maybe your peers teased you. Maybe you opened up about something and someone laughed. Each of those moments was recorded by your nervous system as a micro-trauma, and those memories compound. They create a blueprint. If I express myself, I'll get hurt. Now, as an adult, your extroversion still drives you toward people, but your trauma pulls you back. The result is this emotional tug-of-war that never ends. When you start understanding it from that lens, you can begin to treat yourself with compassion instead of judgment. You realize it's not that you're broken, you're adaptive. You built a system that kept you safe. But now that system is outdated, you don't need it anymore. That's why healing starts with safety. Not safety from people, but safety with yourself. Because until you feel safe being you, you'll keep using performance as protection. You'll keep overanalyzing, overcompensating, Overperforming, you'll keep mistaking approval for love. To heal, you have to learn to self-soothe in real time. Let's say you in a social situation and your anxiety starts rising, your heart is racing, your thoughts are looping, you're worrying about saying the wrong thing. Instead of trying to suppress that, try acknowledging it. Quietly tell yourself, I'm safe right now. I'm just overstimulated. Take a slow, conscious breath, not a big dramatic one, just a subtle one. Feel your feet on the ground. Reconnect with your body. Every time you do that, you're teaching your brain that social discomfort doesn't equal danger. You're reprogramming your fear response. But that's not all. You also have to unlearn the mental habits that fuel your anxiety. One of the biggest ones is mind reading, assuming you know what others think of you. You say something and immediately your mind goes, they'd probably think I'm stupid, or they didn't laugh, they must be bored. But that's not intuition, that's projection. You're projecting your own self-doubt onto others. The truth is, most people aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. They're too busy thinking about themselves. Socially anxious extroverts tend to have a hyper-focus on external validation because their internal sense of worth is fragile. The antidote is to start building that worth internally, not by saying affirmations, but by acting in integrity with yourself. Every time you honor your own boundaries, every time you're authentic, even when it's uncomfortable, you rebuild trust with yourself. There's also this emotional addiction that often develops, the addiction to being liked. Because being liked feels like proof that you're safe. So you start chasing it compulsively. You change your personality depending on who you're around. You mirror others. You say yes when you mean no. But every time you betray yourself for approval, your anxiety grows stronger. It's like feeding a monster. What you have to start doing is replacing approval with authenticity. When you say something true, even if it lands awkwardly, your body learns that you survived. That's how you build real confidence, not by being perfect, but by being genuine. Something I often tell people is that confidence isn't the absence of fear. It's the ability to act while afraid. A lot of socially anxious extroverts wait for the anxiety to go away before they can be themselves. But it doesn't work like that. You have to move through it. You have to show your nervous system that fear doesn't mean stop, it just means care. You care about how you show up, you care about people, and that's okay. Let the fear exist, but don't let it drive. When you start doing that repeatedly, the fear loses its power. And then comes a profound shift. You start to realize that being liked was never the goal. Being connected was. Being understood was. And you can't be truly understood if you're always editing yourself. You have to let people see the messy, imperfect, awkward parts of you. That's where intimacy grows. That's where real friendship and love live. But to do that, you have to risk being misunderstood. And that's terrifying, I know. But it's also liberating. Because once you experience being loved for who you are instead of who you pretend to be, you'll never go back.